So welcome, Ajoke. Thanks for joining us today. How's your day
Thanks.
going?
My day is going okay. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. So we're going to kick off with you telling us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So my name is obviously Ajoke Bodunde. I am 26 years old. I live in Lagos. I literally just moved to Lagos 2 weeks ago. Um, I just finished law school and just started a new job. So there's a lot of new things happening. I studied law, and so I'm I guess almost a lawyer, just waiting for like results to come out and to be hopefully called to the bar. And beyond law, I have like hobbies. I like to play tennis. I'm really also involved in, I guess, some creative work. So, I write poetry. I'm an editor. And I just like I would describe myself as well-rounded person, I guess.
With that, so in terms of you studied law, where did you study law?
Yeah, I studied at Durham University. This was 2016 to 2019. And then I did a master's that was not related to law at all. And then I did the bar actually in the UK before I came back to do law school here.
What was your master's in?
So my master's was in gender studies, and I did that at the London School of Economics. And it was a really, really lovely course that I thoroughly enjoyed. When I was in university, I had a course, I did jurisprudence and I did feminist jurisprudence as one of my topics. And so I was just really interested in that. And I decided that I wanted to do a master's in gender studies while I kind of thought about the direction I wanted to take with law.
That's very interesting. The fact that you could study something, you saw your interest from a particular what
Mm-hmm.
course, and then
Yeah.
that led you to trying something different or studying a little bit more in that space to see where it would take you.
Yeah,
That's
100%.
interesting. So in terms of your mind, where you are now, how has it shaped, I guess, your decisions in terms of what you would like to do in your profession going forward?
I think it influences my day to day life, honestly, just the way that I think I navigate the world, being kind of conscious of, I guess, my position in the world as a woman, as an African woman, as a Black woman, etc. And just, yeah, it influences my daily life. But in terms of my career prospects, I had actually applied for a PhD before I kind of moved back to do law school. And I didn't get the PhD, and I am not doing one now, but it's definitely something that I would want to do in the future. I always say that academia is kind of like my retirement plan because I do really have a passion for education. And if I did a PhD, it would be around gender studies. Yeah, it would be around it would be around that. It wouldn't be a legal PhD at all. It would be around that. And maybe taking in my experience kind of like in the creative world, or like my own creative experience and observations, and trying to do something there.
Mm.
Because yeah, I think that's the way the course actually shaped, I guess, my worldview and what I would want to do in my career very, very long term.
Your educational journey from where you started and also talking about your time at HLC.
I went to primary school in Nigeria. I then went to secondary school, just one all the way to SS3 in Nigeria as well. I went to a school in Abuja called British Nigerian Academy. It kind of ran the British curriculum as well as the WAEC curriculum. And then I remember like kind of applying for different schools for sixth form, which was the path that I was going to take. I know some people do foundation, but I wanted to do A levels. So I applied to kind of a bunch of schools for A levels, and I got into Harrogate Ladies College. I remember it was my sister and I actually. So my sister is 2 years younger than me. And so we both kind of went to write the exam, and then I went to HLC. I did my exam there. I got into the school, and I started sixth form in 2014 to 2016. So I was in HLC for 2 years, lower six and upper six, and it was a really, really great experience, I would say. Different from obviously my secondary school back home in Nigeria, but I think that it was a great experience, and I was able to really thrive in the school. I think I often feel like I wouldn't say I peaked academically, but I think that was the beginning of my academic peaking,
Mm.
right? So
Mm.
I found it a very conducive environment for me to succeed and excel. Um, and I also found it really easy to integrate into the school. I mean, I became deputy head girl. I participated in kind of school activities. And yeah, and I really liked that. And then after that, I applied to Durham University, which Durham is not far from, it's quite far, but it's not very far from HLC, I guess, if you're thinking about how far it is from London. So I remember we took a visit to Durham, and I think it was York or Leeds. And Durham was always a university kind of that I had thought about wanting to go to.
Your time at HLC, you've mentioned that that's where you feel you began to, I guess, academically, you felt like you really
Yeah.
soared. And what exactly was it about it that you would say helped you?
Yeah, so I it's so interesting because I started HLC quite late. So I think everyone had resumed kind of early September, and I resumed quite late, maybe 3 to 4 weeks late. And I remember in my first English literature class kind of being slightly emotional because I felt behind. And so it wasn't the case that I kind of got in there guns blazing, being like really, really good at and like learning whatever was being taught to me. I actually struggled a little bit. I remember getting a lot of C's when I started there at first. But I think the school is somewhere that if you push yourself, you have people to support you. So I remember I would kind of like spend the extra time to practice questions and practice essays and practice kind of like exam style questions. And I would go to my teachers and they would mark them for me. And I would ask for feedback and they would tell me get, how I could get a better grade. And I would do another essay and I would give it to my teacher again and they would mark. And this was kind of like all essays that were not necessarily given to us as homework or whatever. This was kind of me doing it in my own spare time. And so I was able to, with the support of my teachers, improve my grade as a result of me being, I guess, kind of dedicated to wanting to do that. But just having that environment where, I can go to my teachers and ask for feedback and ask to to specifically help me with improving the way that I approached the different courses that I did. I think also everyone was generally kind of nice and friendly and welcoming, and I didn't feel like, oh, I was in this new school and I couldn't talk to anyone and I was kind of like not comfortable. There were other international students there. The girls who were kind of like day students or whatever, they were lovely and they were friendly. And there were just so many things that were available to do that would help you integrate into the school, whether it's house music or, we did some opera in school where we did like a made in Chelsea version of Dido and Aeneas. And so there were just so many extracurricular activities that students could participate in that would help them kind of learn more about each other. We had a chapel, which was also a good way of like meeting people and participating. So yeah, it was just great teachers who were open to helping me improve and be better. And I guess, me being able to do the extra work and then being receptive to that. And second thing was different avenues through which I could properly integrate into the school.
If you were to look back and think, where did you get that level of motivation from to do additional work? Where do you feel that came from? Is it upbringing? Is it your school in Nigeria? Is it just self motivated? Can you share a little bit about that?
I think maybe it's just upbringing slash maybe my experience in schools in general. I think I'm just remembering being 9 years old in like primary school. So I finished primary school. I didn't do primary 5 or 6 at like 9 years old. Was it? I was in primary 4. And I remember seeing like a common entrance exam once for us for like a secondary school. And I remember going to my parents being like, okay, guys, I want to write this exam. I'm going to
Mhm.
prepare. I have like 2, 3 weeks. I'm going to prepare. And every time I think about it now, of like waking up in the night to read Ugo Silgo books, I'm just so confused,
Mm.
honestly, because I don't know where that came from. But
Mm.
preparing for that exam, writing the exam, getting into the school, and my dad being like, "Are you sure you want to go?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm ready to leave this house and be in a boarding school." So I don't know. I think maybe it's just like I really don't know where it's come from, but I think I've always been the person who would wake up in school, like in the middle of the night, writing my 5 to 10 year plan. So there's
Mm.
always, I guess, been that desire to be the best that I can be, and improve myself, and I guess plan ahead and solve a problem. And I think that, you know, even though someone might have that motivation, I do think that the environment that they're in can either nurture that, or kind of take that out of them. If you're in an environment where you feel like you are not, where you feel like, I guess, where you feel like the intention of that place is not for you to necessarily excel, but for you to maybe follow strict rules and kind of
Mm.
like fall in line, then you might not feel, it might not, the environment might not be adequate enough in providing that kind of support for you. So as much as
Right.
maybe I'm a self-motivated person, I'm ambitious, etc., I do think that the environment that you're in really plays a huge role in either facilitating that or being, or stopping that, because it could be the
Mm.
case where, I felt hostility from teachers. It could be the case where, I would go with like my extra essays, and I mean I did a lot of extra essays, and they're like, oh, Ajoke, we can't really kind of
Mm.
mark this. You're going to have to just stick to the assignments that we give you, right? So I was
Mm.
able to, my own pace of wanting to learn and wanting to better myself was accepted in that school, and that's why I was able
Mm.
to get feedback. That's why I was able to do more essays and get better at those essays.
Absolutely. That is so profound actually on many, many levels. Um, first of all, amazing that at 9 you were that clear on what you wanted. So clearly there's something there in terms of your character as a
Mm,
person. And like you rightly said, an environment can either enhance
yeah,
or diminish your own self intrinsic motivation. So thank you
yeah.
for sharing that. That was quite insightful. Two or three things you would advise maybe a student who's considering studying abroad. Let's talk about maybe for sixth form. What
Mm.
would those be?
Okay. I guess I'll preface this by first saying that I think one of the main things that I recognize in terms of the differences was, I think, if you're thinking about, I'm thinking more so like maybe the WAEC system, right? So like the
Mm.
typical Nigerian WAEC or NECO exams is, I feel like it's very much garbage in, garbage out. Whereas I think that in what I found with like A levels and stuff was, there's a requirement for you to apply to some extent, and like really, it's not just, you don't just kind of cram with an argument and spill it back. There is the need for you
Mm.
to really engage with the material that you're doing, right? You have, for
Mm.
instance, with English lit, I remember having coursework and like having to do analysis and having to really think critically, and there's a level of independence that is expected in thought and stuff like that, right? That would be the first thing I'll kind of preface what I'm saying,
Mm.
by first disclosing. And then
Okay.
advice that I would give with sixth form and A levels, and even with GCSEs as well, I think number one, use the resources that you have, whether it be teachers, whether it be libraries, whether it be friends who are maybe slightly better at a course that you than you are. Um, just ask questions, try to be better, do the extra work um, to try and get to where you want to get to, and you can track yourself. You can track your progress quite, like, so I think sometimes, and I don't know if this is everyone, but right now in my life, I wish I could take, if I could take some advice from that 15-year-old girl, right? So because when I started writing essays, I was getting C's at first, and then I was getting higher C's, and then I was getting B's, and I was getting, before I started getting A's, right? And so I think don't put the pressure on yourself to jump from a C to an A star, right? There's so many other steps that are in between that C to an A star, and so just gradually track your progress, gradually do the things you need to do to improve, whether it's like taking the extra step to do more assignments, asking teachers for maybe extra time to explain things. Really use your resources. The teachers are there to help you learn. The resources are there so that you can use them and make the best use of your time, essentially. On a more practical note, like I think one of the things that really, really helped, especially I remember with religious studies, especially, like we were doing so many past questions. By the time we had exams, I think he had included it in our in our program that we would have done majority of the past questions under time conditions in class, like answering them. So look at past questions. Answer past questions, look at the mark scheme, look at what they want from you. Literally, if you look at what they want from you, you give them what they want, as opposed to kind of like being in the dark and not being sure what it is that is required of you. If you look at the past questions, you see how they want you to answer the questions. You also see the way they ask the questions. You're not in the dark. You're able to really just you know what they want, and you can give them what they want, essentially, and you can revise around those past questions. I mean, I think things are slightly different now, where they have one almighty exam at the end. And I don't know because I did English literature, religious studies, and government and politics. So I don't know, for instance, what physics is saying or what math is saying, right? But I can speak from the ones that I did, where looking at past questions really, really helped. And don't be, I guess, stuck in the way you studied before, or in the way you studied before. Like, I think sometimes in secondary school, I remember just it was notes, and you read your notes, and you read your textbook, and you write your exam. Whereas when I was in like politics class, we're looking at the news, we're looking at different kinds of media, we're looking at different sources. There's like pictures, and you're just looking at a bunch of different things that are not necessarily kind of notes, just text. You're looking at a bunch of different things. You're watching maybe documentaries or arguments. I remember in religious studies class watching like arguments between like two people, and then you're able to extract information from those arguments that you're watching. And so just don't limit yourself to the way you knew how to study previously, the way you assimilated information previously. Be open to new ways of learning. Be open to group discussions, which I think is also another thing that is really encouraged in school. Or at least when I was in HLC, we would have group discussions. You would say your own opinion. You would work, in smaller groups, in bigger groups, and you guys would class was very much collaborative. And so don't be the person who is not able to speak or contribute in class, because your best way of studying is by just reading your books and writing an exam, right? Really interact and be adaptable in those environments, because I think that's when you're able to get the best out of your time there.
Very, very, very many tips you've given, for sure. Be flexible, be open to thinking outside the box. If you're coming from C's, it's not about overnight. Neither should you, I guess, feel deflated, which is something I've picked up, is because you haven't figured it out now, just means you haven't figured it out yet. Doesn't mean you're not good at it. Doesn't mean you can't get there. Being willing to push yourself, because no teacher, no system can do it for you. You have 100%. To have that level of drive yourself to be better. Was there anything at HLC that you would say your time there that might have influenced your career path?
One thing I took away from HLC, or that the environment that HLC created enabled me to do, was to be able to succeed academically whilst also doing extracurricular activities. So participating in house music, being deputy head girl, saying we should start an inclusion committee, taking part in food council, etc. And I think what that has helped me do is, earlier on in this interview, I kind of talked about that I would describe myself as a sort of all rounder, right? Whilst I'm kind of in the
Mm-hmm.
early stages of a legal career of some sort, I also try to balance that with my love for the arts and taking part in um, kind of the creative world, being part of the infrastructure to some extent, and also doing my own stuff with writing and poetry. And I think it's being able to do that at HLC or in school in general, being able to be an all rounder in school, that has enabled me to also desire being an all rounder in my own interest and in my own career, if that makes sense. The subjects that I did at HLC were humanities subjects, and I ended up studying law, which is within the humanities, and I've ended up kind of like pursuing a career in law, which I guess that checks out. But I think the main thing that I would say was a huge takeaway was recognizing that I could do different things and I guess succeed at those different things if I am
Mm.
hardworking, if I manage my time well, if I'm adaptable, and if I'm committed to my goals, essentially. And so I think it's more so the mindset and the approach to work, that I've really taken away from my time there.
Mm.
Right. And
Yeah,
so
fantastic.
I think also one thing that is so key is, I think, there's a level of independence that comes from going away from home to a different country and going to school and being there and navigating a new environment, right? You're really, really, I guess, to some extent thrown into the deep end, and you have to navigate that, right? You have to learn about people that are different from you. You have to stand up for yourself when you need to stand up for yourself. You have to be bold, and you have to have courage. And I think that is a huge influence for me in my life right now. Like, I feel like HLC and being there and that experience. And I do think being in, as I said, in boarding school away from home in general gives you that independence. And I think that enables you to really go for your goals and approach your life in a different way. Right. You really want to be at the driver's seat. You want to be at the forefront of your life. And I think that has been like the huge takeaway. I'm so grateful to have had that experience of just learning, being independent.
Where do you see yourself perhaps in the next 5 years?
I see myself at doing what I'm doing now, but at a better and in a more advanced way. So I see myself having progressed further in my legal career, hopefully practicing across more than one jurisdiction. And I also see myself still being actively involved in the creative arts, and playing a lot of tennis, please, every single day.
When we're talking before the episode started, you were sharing that you are a published poet. Can you tell us a
Yes.
little bit about that?
It's so funny because I'm going for a poetry event literally maybe in like an hour's time. I'm going to be reading a poem there. I started writing poetry when I was really young. Even at HLC, I would bug my English literature teacher to read some of my poems. And it's just something that I've always continued to do. And I've been lucky that in some cases when I've submitted work to places, they have accepted my poetry and they've agreed to publish it. So I have published in a poem in Ake Review. I don't know if you know Ake Festival, or is it
Mm-hmm.
Ake Literary Festival? That was a long time ago in 2017. I have a poem in another book called Black Joy Unbound. I've been shortlisted for 2 poetry prizes, which has been nice. And so it's just something that I try to continue to do. It's been quite hard in the past year and a half, kind of. I think sometimes when you're in school, especially if you're studying something like law, all the creative juices literally dry up. But I'm hoping that now I have some more free time and I'm able to really nurture that part of me a bit more, and hopefully write a bit more and read a bit more. And I do think that creativity is really important to us as people. I think it helps us process what we go through. It helps us relax. It helps us kind of go back to that playful place, that kind of like childlike wonder, and just, I guess, exist without the pressures of the world sometimes. Even though it can be a way, I mean, if you're doing it professionally, it can be quite stressful. um, but I do think that it's important, and I'm working on. I'm thinking of working on something that kind of explores that. So hopefully I'll see where that takes me. But it's something that I've been thinking about a lot, the role creativity plays in kind of enabling us to live a richer and better life.
Thank you so much, Ajoke. This has been really interesting. I mean, I love speaking to people, but I've really, really enjoyed this conversation with you today. I
Thank you.
think
Same here.
you have a level of wisdom that is pretty phenomenal, actually. So I just wish you all the very best in everything that you do, and
Thank you so much.
continue to fully believe in yourself that whatever you put your mind to, you can achieve it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That's really kind of you. Thank you.
That has been a really interesting conversation with Ajoke, sharing her perspectives from being a student at HLC, her career choices, where she's gone on to where she is now in her life, in terms of what she's doing, her new job. And I think there's just so many nuggets we've taken away from this conversation about the importance of choosing the right environment for your child for education. And as we can see through a lot of things she shared, having an enabling environment at Harrogate Ladies College and the teachers there supported her extracurricular number one, and also supported her as a student who wanted to do better academically. So it's so important that you ask those kind of questions when you are looking for a school for your child. And this is something to listen to, I believe, as a parent, and with your children as well, because there are many, many gems that Ajoke shared. She's clearly an amazing young woman who is going to do amazing things in her life and be a positive influence in the world. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. And if you have any further questions at all in terms of navigating the journey to choosing a school in the UK, for example, a sixth form for your child or children, feel free to reach out or also visit HLC's website, and we'll put all of that information in the show notes.